Bruce Mehlman, you've said that the issue of getting more broadband to more Americans does not hinge on net neutrality. What does it hinge on? How do we improve America's position in the global table when it comes to broadband access?
Sure. First, you have to start with where do you want to measure from. It's reasonable to say about a decade ago, in the year 2000, almost no one had broadband. Broadband was very new. Within a decade, 95% of Americans could get broadband. 63% of Americans have chosen to get broadband. The data rates aren't as fast as they are in nations with greater linear density of population, like South Korea and Japan. But the data rates keep getting faster. The offerings keep getting more competitive. Wireless broadband particularly is more and more robust. We saw a 5,000% increase in AT&T's network of wireless traffic upon introduction of the iPhone. RIM's got great products that are also driving folks, as do companies like Hewlett-Packard in the notepad space. So I start from the belief that things aren't nearly as disastrous as some would find. To get more broadband, the FCC has said you need about $350 billion of new investment. Government does not have $350 billion to invest in more broadband. They just don't. It's got to be private sector investment. So the first best thing we can do for broadband is to provide certainty for investors, and that certainty around regulation. The proposals to change how we regulate net neutrality, to take a more aggressive approach, undermine investment. So the single first thing that can be done, in my opinion, by the FCC is to shelve, put to bed, or otherwise make clear a very light touch is the best approach until Congress chooses to set the proper parameters for broadband regulation. But beyond that, if 63% of the country has it and 95% could have it, you clearly have an adoption gap. The adoption gap is not around those policies on regulation. They're around things like digital literacy. They're around things like the cost of broadband. They're around things like consumers' concerns about fraud and cybersecurity and viruses and privacy. There are many good policies that can and should be pursued that aren't regulation of the internet that could cause greater confidence, greater competence of the potential broadband population.
What do you think distinguishes Democrats and Republicans on broadband policy?
Well, again, telecom for most of its history has not been such a partisan issue. Right now, a bipartisan majority in Congress has told the FCC to slow down on their proposed net neutrality regulations and to let Congress lead. So if you wanted to look for the bipartisanship, you'd find it there. Other than the net neutrality issue, which did start as a campaign issue in '06 and the campaign of '08, a lot of these issues are very bipartisan and are historically bipartisan. Questions of spectrum reform, universal service reform don't typically break down along partisan lines and don't need to.